So we're here today with Paul Bourne of the Tamarack Institute. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do?
Well, currently I'm with the Tamarack Institute. It's a new institute that I founded to promote community building in Canada.
Okay, now community building, I'm going to stop you right there. What is community building?
Well, essentially community building is looking at the assets of a community and trying to enhance those. And sometimes when you look at assets, you see what assets a community doesn't have, and you start to build on those. So part of the assets of a community is, first of all, how well a community works together. So how do you begin to measure that? How do you begin to find that? Well, it's not that difficult. You know, you can really begin to look at the kind of not-for-profit organizations in a community. I find that a very good barometer, and I try to find, how many business people do they have on their boards, and at what level do they have business people? So how involved are people in the kind of voluntary work in their community? I'm also very concerned about government and to see how government is involved beyond funding, and that they're involved as people in some of the real issues that are going on.
So your institute helps other communities to do this better or well?
Well, that's exactly what we do. And one of the key things that our institute is known for is multi-sectoral collaboration. How do we get everyone in a community to work at the problems and the opportunities in a community together? We're also not just interested, obviously, in the problems. We're very interested in the way that a community can think about its future. And so one of our great dreams is, to help communities to come up with a really bold vision, like we did here in Waterloo, where we said, hey, we want to have the lowest level of poverty in this country, and then we're going to try to eliminate it. Now, more importantly, we're going to try to measure that.
I'm just going to interrupt you there for a minute, Paul, because the students taking this course are in the career development program.
Right.
So in terms of what you said about poverty reduction, for example, many of the students in this course would be, career counselors working in not-for-profit organizations who are helping people find work. So is that part of what it is that you're concerned about, that element of things?
Well, I think we're really concerned about employment, and employment that is sustainable for people.
Okay, so Paul, that was a wonderful introduction, and our main theme today is on proposal writing. Now, to take you back to your introduction, you have to write proposals, I assume, in your position with the Tamarack Institute. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Prior to the Tamarack Institute, I was with an organization called CODA, the Community Opportunities Development Association, which, of course, you know very well. I think in total, I was as I was thinking about these questions, I've probably raised over $20 million from proposals that I've written. And the most recent one, I just received a $2.4 million grant from a private funder. Matter of fact, in the last 3 years, most of my proposals have been to private funders and far less to government, mainly because I like working at the innovation side rather than at the sort of maintenance side, right, which I always call sort of maintenance human services. And so that's kind of my background.
Those figures are impressive, and yet they might be a little intimidating too. Those numbers are extremely large. Did you start out writing proposals at $2.5 million?
Well, no, I can actually remember my very first proposal. I was 21 years of age, and I had to keep my job. That was the first time, and I think I've had a lot of proposals like that. I got to write these to keep my job, So the first one I did, I think, was for $50,000, and I thought I was king of the world, And it was neat. It was a wonderful process, but I learned a lot right from the very beginning on what it takes to actually write a proposal. And matter of fact, I think we'll get into this a little later on, but I don't write proposals, I create them.
Well, why don't you talk about that? You've introduced that. You said you don't write proposals, you create them. So explain more about that.
Well, I don't recall. I think I've had 2 proposals in my life that haven't been funded. So I know it's kind of an interesting track record, out of $20 million. But, I don't want to write a proposal until I have a commitment at the other end. So I think the proposal is the last thing you do. It's not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is get your ducks in a row. Really understand what it is that you want, right? To be really clear on that. To get really clear on what it is that I need. And then to actually ask the question, well, who am I? Who are we? So I always say, the key elements of a great proposal, right, are to first of all be able to answer the question, who are we? What's been our financial performance, right? Are we worth investing in? What's been our track record? You know, when we say we're going to do something, do we get it done, right? What do we need, right? How do we, you know, and need in such a compelling way, and I always like to put it even further. I don't like to just ask what we need. I like to ask the question, what is what we're going to do? How is what we're going to do make the world a better place? And I want to be that clear. Because, you know, I don't have a lot of time to share with people, and I got to know that in my heart, that this is going to help make the world a better place. That's why I'm writing the proposal. That's why someone's going to give me money, right?
Well, let's talk more about that. I mean, those thoughts are intriguing, and I have a number of questions for you about them. First of all, make the world a better place. How do you know that? How do you know that's what you want or need to do? Do you do research to determine that there is a true need or want for what it is that you're proposing to provide?
Well, absolutely. We do extensive research. But, you know, I think I want to come back to this fundamental point, right? And it's really kind of the spiritual aspect of all fundraising, right? And the spiritual aspect of fundraising is you've got to believe. If you can't believe in what you're doing, right, then there's really you're not the right person writing that proposal.
So you're talking about passion, that the passion needs to come through?
A belief, a true vision, a true sense that what you're going to do is going to make the world a better place, right? So that if you're writing a proposal that's going to help you to do employment counseling for, you know, 100 people that are on social assistance and you're going to get them jobs, well, you better believe that what you're doing, right, and what you're writing and the program that you're going to do, that's really going to help these people. And in your heart, you really want to help these people. And you know, ultimately, that's what people are going to catch. The words and everything are going to be far less important to them. I've written some really lousy proposals, you know, that have gotten funded, mainly because I'm very passionate and I very much believe that what I'm writing is going to make a difference.
So we've interviewed others that actually review proposals, and they've stressed the importance of a proposal writer doing the research,
right?
You know, having the data to support it. But you're saying that equally, or in fact more important, is that the passion, commitment, and belief in what you're doing, it needs to be there.
Well, but you know, Wes, what's I think really important here to understand is that, you know, passion without brains is fairly useless, right? So the clear thing here is that you got to know what you're doing. So, I mean, if you're passionate about something, I've never known someone who's passionate about something who really believes in it, who's not obsessed to find out everything they can about what it is that they want to work at, right? So they're reading and they're thinking and they're doing the research because they want to put that kind of data in there, not just for the funder, but for themselves. You know, so I certainly do not believe in research for the sake of research. Right? If you got to research to meet your soul, right? If you got to think, if that's how you get to your soul is through your mind, then think. Think hard about what you're doing. Answer every question you can potentially answer, right? But you've got to believe it. If you don't believe it, how do you expect someone that you're writing a proposal to believe it?
Well, I think you've made your point. It's you're passionate about this point. Thanks for sharing it. I have another question for you, though, related to this passion and that the fact that you said, well, I've written poor proposals, but they get funded because people know my passion. Well, you know, isn't a proposal just a piece of paper that you submit? How do they know you're passionate? How does that come about?
I have never written a proposal until I've gotten a yes.
So are you talking with the funder and meeting with them before
you
write the proposal?
I spend an inordinate amount of time building relationships. As a matter of fact, at CODA, we had this thing called the 80-20 rule. It's a very, very interesting rule. That meant that we spent 80% of our time talking to people about who they were, about what their passion was. We got to know them. I knew the names of their children. I knew the names of their spouse. I knew what they did recreationally. Right? I knew who they were as people. I knew what really made them tick. I knew how, for many government employees, I knew how disenfranchised they were in their jobs, and I did everything I could to try and make them feel good about who they were and what they did. And in the midst of that, I really got to understand how what I wrote would move them, right? First of all. Now, often it goes into a big system that is completely unconnected to the individual. But the reality is there's a champion for every proposal. You've got to find that champion, right? And you've got to work with them. And again, not work with them in an artificial way that you're trying to sell someone or you're trying to manipulate someone, But if you're passionate about what you believe, and if you're passionate about people, right, then you'll get to know those people, and you'll get to know them and treat them like human beings. And in doing that, you'll begin to understand what it is they need from your proposal. Then you know what? Writing a proposal is so simple. You know you've got your idea, you've got your passion, you've done all your research because you love what you're doing, right? And then you move forward to getting to know someone, and now you're actually writing to someone. It almost becomes like writing a letter. It's a 25-page letter, but it's a letter. You know?
Well, let me ask you then, if you go out and seek these relationships, how do you find these people? How do you find out that there's these people out there that you can develop a relationship with and then, propose your idea to them?
Well, I think it's just like anything else. I mean, if we want to do it in a technical manner, we often did a lot of prospecting. So we would actually identify where people are in different ministries, if it's government or different private sector people that would have the same sort of passion as we do about the kind of work that we're doing. And then we would we would start to get to know them. We'd do some research on them, right? We'd set up a meeting, so we'd go and see them. And often it takes time to go and talk to a whole lot of people. But just think about the track record, right? $20 million worth of proposals, and I think there's been 2 in my life that I've not gotten funded. So the track record here is about taking a lot of time to find out who to write the proposal to, right? And then talking to that individual, getting to know that individual before I write the proposal. Now, there's a lot of people who have a track record of writing 100 proposals and maybe get 20 of them funded, right? Well, you tell me about the waste of time there. And not just the waste of time, but the waste of spiritual energy. Every time a proposal doesn't get funded, it's like someone's taking a piece out of you. And then there's many who will tell you, don't worry about that. You're going to get the rejection, right? But come on, it happens, and it does something to you every time, and it takes your energy away. And you can't just remove yourself from the process of the proposal. Matter of fact, if you're wondering why proposals aren't getting funded, it's probably because you've removed yourself from the passion of what you're writing about.
So just talk about the time that it does require to develop that relationship. I can imagine it's different with every person, but are we talking weeks here, months? What time frame are you talking?
Well, it's very interesting. For some people, it clicks right away. So the time period isn't that long. It clicks right away. And you can just sort of start working with them. And they get it, they love it, and you're moving forward. But I think we would suggest that the writing of the proposal would be less than 10% of the effort of going into that proposal. So the other 80% again is relationship building, right? 10% I think is deep research, right? And so then you've just got to write the proposal. And it shouldn't take you that long. Most proposals that I write don't take me more than a day or 2 to write, right? But it's the other work that can take several weeks, several months, and in some cases several years. Now, it's a way of doing business. The way of doing business is a relational way of doing business. Every person you meet is a potential funder. Every person. Doesn't matter who they are, including the client across from you. And that's the way you begin to live, right? And everyone can lead you to another source of funding. That's another way that you begin to live. And then you begin to document and track people. So for instance, now on my Palm Pilot, I have notes on a whole range of people. So if I haven't seen someone in a while, because they may live in Ottawa or they may live somewhere else, I can click on that and I can get a whole profile on that individual. And I can begin to understand what my relationship is with that individual. We also have tracking systems that if certain people are important to us, we make sure that we stay in touch with them all the time. That there's a very important role in communication. Matter of fact, getting funding from someone is really the start, right, of a funding relationship. Prior to that, it's a getting to know relationship. Once someone's a funder, you don't want to lose them. Another great track record at CODA, we never lost a major funder, ever. Why? I attribute it to the 80-20 rule. It's not about proposal writing, it's about getting to know people.
Thanks for that, Paul. I want to take you to a point now that you mentioned in that answer in terms of writing the proposal. You say you develop the relationship and it takes you a day or 2 to write a proposal. Talk to us about what goes into a proposal? Maybe the table of contents, if you can. Some specifics about the information that would go into a typical
Sure.
funding proposal.
Well, I think what would go into a typical funding proposal, and again, I work very much on cases for support. When you're working on a government proposal, it's quite different because they give you very, very stringent criteria. And so you just got to follow that, right? But there are 4 key elements in every proposal, and we can't lose sight of this. The first key element is, who are we? And who are we delineates all the kind of things about the organization, what we do, right? How we manage our finances, right? And our track record in doing that. Our results, how we measure our results, all that kind of stuff. But first of all, you've got to be able to say, who are we, in a way that is compelling to the person that's looking at the proposal. They need to immediately, when they're reading it, have confidence in who's writing that proposal. The second key element is, what do we need? And I've talked about that earlier in terms of what do we need is, how is what we're going to do make the world a better place? Well, you got to remember, you may know how it's going to make the world a better place, but now you have to translate it to someone else. So if in that relationship you understand the way that this person thinks is they need a lot of facts and figures to make that case, then you better have your facts and figures in there and write it in such a way that it is a logical and clear case for what you need, right? And part of what you need is money. The third key element is very, very important. Matter of fact, I think this is what closes a proposal. And that is, how do you know, or how can you express, right, to the person that you're writing the proposal to, in a way that they believe you, right, that what you say you're going to do, you're going to get done. Now that's a very interesting one. Primarily that works at track record, right? So that's one thing that you want to write in there. But that's also where you put the compelling need in. You see, part of what people will do is they'll say, great organization, great case for what they need. But now what they're really kind of thinking about, well, is it really a need? And this is where you're able to say that. And you're able to give them that sense that this is a need. Now sometimes you want to say that more anecdotally, right? You want to tell a little bit of a story, right? Because you want to move their hearts. And if you know the person, you'll know which way to go with this. I always put a few facts in there, right? But I also like to tell the story, to move the person's heart, to give them a sense of those facts in reality. And then there's the fourth element of the proposal. And the fourth element of the proposal is, how are you going to involve that funder? How are you going to keep them involved? That's particularly important for private funders, but it's also important for government funders in a sense where you have a real way of being able to keep them engaged in what you're doing. And when you're making mistakes, you have a way of helping them with that. But really what they want to know is that it's an open relationship. Now sometimes they want to have their own nest feathered, right? So you got to figure that out, and I don't mean that in a sense of paying anyone off. But what I'm really interested in is that a lot of corporations today, want to know that you're going to protect their name, that you're going to use their name in such a way that it will benefit them. Again, part of that's track record, but also it's having a kind of a program that recognizes people sufficiently and effectively. Now you often see donor walls. That's one way of doing it.
Okay. Paul, I'm going to ask you, where did you learn how to do this? I mean, you've really articulated some great rules of thumb to follow in creating proposals, but you had to start somewhere.
I don't know exactly where you learn this, I mean, I think that everyone's got their own style, right? And I think that like taking a course like people are taking now is really important because it helps them to understand the key issues. Really, I think I learned it from watching, from looking at other proposals. I used to collect them, just to be able to have a sense of what's going on. And I had, a whole room full, a whole sort of shelf full of different proposals. I never, ever put a proposal into a filing cabinet. I always put it on the shelf. I always used the last proposal to improve the next proposal. And then I came up with a system or a rhythm that worked for me. And that sort of system and rhythm became kind of a way of being for me, right? And it's just how we did it. And what was very interesting, again, and I can't stress this enough, is that the writing of the proposal is a very, very simple thing, right? If you do your homework, right? If you have a relationship, and if you know what it is you want to say, and it comes from within.
Do you have any closing comments that, based upon your experiences, you'd like to share with students? Do you think it's really important that they know that you haven't had a chance to say already?
Well, I think the most important thing, and again, I'm not going to say that I haven't said this already, is, there's a lot of organizations out there and a lot of schools out there that make you think that a lot of the work that you do is something that you learn, it's a system that you follow, it's education, right? And I guess what I'd really like to say to people is that it's not only about education. Education is one of the most wonderful things, but if it's not moving you, and if it's not affecting you, and you're not integrating it into who you are and into what you believe, right? Then really, it's very hard to be effective at anything you do. Right? So believe in yourself, believe in others, have passion, have vision, right? And that's how you're going to get ahead in life. It's not by what it's not just by what you know.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Paul.